Hello everybody, it is I, Brian the Pirate, with another video, and in this video I'm going to give you essentially a how to loot filter 101. I made a video previously, but it was just a 1 minute 30-second short reel TikTok thing, which was essentially go to my Discord and download this file, have fun. And a lot of you did, by the way. Hello to those of you who were in the Discord. I hope that file has helped. And then a lot of the comments on those videos were from console users who were like, what about us, daddy? And essentially all of the replies in the comments were, what about you? Which, you know, is a bit of a shame. I completely empathize with console players. Also, don't ever call me daddy. They didn't, but just so you know. But in this video, console players, we've got you. But we're also going to take you through obviously a far longer format video, go through all the details on how you can customize the loot filter and make it a bit more you. So first of all, what is a loot filter? So essentially, at first glance, it's a text file. It's technically a .filter file, but it's a text file. It's just called .filter, so the Path of Exile client can recognize it. But it's a text file that has a programming language in it, essentially. And it's filled with something called syntax. Now, syntax is basically a word that represents in either actual language, spoken and written, like what words are collected in that language and how they function. And then of course you got like lexis, which is just words in general. And then you got grammar, for example, things like that. Whereas in like programming languages, it's the words that you use to create functions and like combinations of words, which will create and tell how the thing that you're making in said language works. In this case, the syntax is pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. Some of you may even recognize it and see it and go, huh, that looks a lot like either like HTML or CSS or even JavaScript. So for example, you got show, and then you got the name of the thing that you want to show, charms, or in other places you'll have hide, you'll have class as in the base class of the item, but you can also have base type, you've got rarity, you've got the font size, you've got the font color, border of the box, background colors, mini map icons, and actually a lot more stuff as well. Now, unless you're a 14-year-old back in the early 2000s learning CSS for the past 10 hours just so you can make your first and best MySpace profile, this is probably something you cannot be asked at all to learn. And I don't blame you. Although I will say picking up a little bit of this is helpful in the long run. And I'll explain why later. Now, thankfully, you don't actually have to learn all of the hundreds of different syntax that are in loot filters. And it's because of this, kind gentleman. This is NeverSync. NeverSync has been in the Path of Exile community for quite a number of years now, and he has took it upon himself to provide the Path of Exile community with a user interface via a website that allows you to easily customize a loot filter and also automatically synchronize it with your account. Now, NeverSync essentially does this all for free. There's a couple of ads on his website, obviously, there should be, but he's done this just to help out with the community, and it's a fantastic service that he provides. So if you do ever see him knocking around on Twitter, leave him a nice message saying, hey man, thanks for what you do, because it is a huge service that he provides, and it's a very helpful tool for everyone that uses it. Now, the website in question is filterblade.xyz. When you first go to the website, it will probably look something a little like this. I imagine you will not be logged in with your Path of Exile account, however, but as you can see, it will by default say Path of Exile 1. Now, this process that I'm about to show you is pretty much the same for both Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2. I imagine most of you are here for Path of Exile 2, however. So what we do is you click on this little button here and select, of course, Path of Exile 2. Now, once you've done that, it will take you to the newer part of the website, the Path of Exile 2 section that literally went live this weekend, hence this video. And yours might look a little bit different to mine because obviously I have made a new filter for myself since it went live. But otherwise, if I'm going off memory here, if I recall correctly, it should just say create new filter and this will be empty. So you click on that and that will take you to the main part of the website. Now, the idea of a loot filter is, as I alluded to earlier with all the customization, it will enable you to pick how you want items to be shown to you in the game. So you can prioritize the visuals on items that are more important to you and straight up hide things that are just junk to you, which during the campaign isn't that important really. As more leagues get added to the game, more items will appear and maybe it'll become a bit more of an issue. But when it comes to end game, when you've got a lot more loot raining down, there's a whole host of items that literally irrelevant to you, and it's just better off to just remove them from your visuals. Two reasons for that, actually. One, it will mean less text on the screen, so less stuff is being loaded. And two, it's visual clutter. You can focus on the items that you actually care about. Now, I would say there are two distinct levels of customization that you can do via the website. the vast majority of you are only going to need the first level for at least probably the first couple of months until you get a lot more familiar with the game, as well as the loot filter itself. So what you're going to want to focus on is this sliding bar here. This sets the level of strictness of the filter. You've got soft, regular, semi-strict, strict, very strict, uber plus strict. What this means is if you are a very experienced player, a lot of the items you're just going to ignore, including some of the base currency, maybe even wisdom scrolls, things like that. Usually also a lot further into the game that you want to restrict things a lot more as well, especially if you've been playing the game for a number of weeks. Maybe you got a really potent build, very deep into farming tier 15, 16, 17, 18s, and pinnacle bosses, for example. So the vast majority of the loot that appears on the ground is stuff that you've already got hundreds or maybe even thousands of already. So that's where you would use this bar to customize that experience specifically. Now, I believe by default, it goes to semi-strict. And as you can see here, there's a little prompt that says recommended filter strictness for beginners and league starters, shows anything potentially useful while hiding the worst of drops. Now, NeverSync is a very experienced Path of Exile player. Now, the loot filters that you create through the Filter Blade website are, of course, based on NeverSync's judgment, but he is, as I mentioned earlier, a very established, well-known, very experienced member of the Path of Exile community, and being so, he is able to confer with a lot of fellow experienced, well-established members of the PoE community. You don't necessarily have to take my word for it, but essentially every single content creator you watch who is in the Path of Exile community uses his filters and trusts in his judgment. Take that for what you will. Going back to this bar, so if you have it on semi-strict, it's basically going to get rid of all of the crap that will definitely be useless to you unless you've got a very niche build. And in those cases, the person whose build you're following will tell you about that anyway. And that will allow you to see all the like important currency, hide things like wisdom scrolls after a certain level. Obviously, at the beginning of the campaign, they tend to be quite important. Change how gold is displayed, how major or important uniques are displayed, things like that. Whether you want to see specific craftable items, waystones based on their level, all of this phenomenal level of customization, add sound effects, and you can even change color schemes. But for the vast majority of you, you're going to want semi-strict. It's going to carry you all the way through to end game, probably for a league or two until you get really familiar with the game. You can change some of the styles here. There's normal, so what you just saw below. You got dark mode, which I think just makes the boxes a slightly different color. Some of them are less highlighted unless they're very important. In case you missed it, normal, dark mode, you can see in the background there. And then you got custom sounds. I'll talk about that later, but you're probably not going to want to touch it unless you're really keen to have fart noises or something. But for now, we'll move on. Once you've selected your level of strictness, you want to click on customize. And then here you can go into a bit more depth on the things that you want to change. Maybe you're looking for specific level of gems. Maybe you don't like the colors. Maybe you want to ignore certain gems that are just completely irrelevant to you. All that shenanigans. Or likewise with gold, you can select what the icons look like and all that shenanigans as well. So you can change the color of the text, for example, the size of the box, whether you want there to be an icon in the box and also on the mini map, whether you want there to be a beam of light. And for the most part, you're going to be pretty happy with how NeverSync has done it. You may want to add some further level of customization down the line, or if you are perhaps colorblind and you just need to make some adjustments for your own sake. Generally, what I would recommend is just leaving these customizations as they are, because you'll eventually learn what these things mean as you play the game. And it will mean that when you see these items on the floor, you will immediately recognize, go, oh, that is because it is a superior item, or because it has a socket, or because it's a specific base type that I want to use a chance orb on, for example. Speaking of which, that's something I will quickly show you, because by default, it adds heavy belt, which if you're not familiar is what the base type is for Headhunter. But there may be, of course, other base types that you're looking for. For example, I'm looking for Astromentis at the moment. So what I would do in that case is I would select add rule, of course, then the rule itself that it has just added. And then I want to focus on this section first before I do anything here. Otherwise, it can kind of break the functionality. So we want the base type. In my case, I'm looking for a stellar amulet. So you can just start typing that in and it will narrow it down for you. You select add, and then that allows you to do the further customizations that you want to do. In this case, as I mentioned, I'm trying to learn what these default symbols mean and this color. So all bases are going to have this little symbol here on the map when they drop, this green border. So whenever I see this, I will know that it's to do with a base type for chancing. It will just become something that I learn. I'm not going to change the font, but I have that option if I wish to. As I said, I can change all of these other things as well. And I want to make sure it's set to show. Then that's been added. That's now an additional rule that is part of my loot filter. Next, you've got simulate. This is more of if you've made customizations, so you just want to see what it looks like. So you can just go generate loot and you can be like, oh, so that's what it looks like with these items on the ground. Yes, that's got good clarity. I like that. And if not, you can go back and customize it further, come back to the simulator thereafter and be like, okay, have the changes made it a bit more readable? Do I like how it looks now? So on and so forth. Next, you've got the style tab. The style tab is more for, whereas with customize, you're changing individual things. Style is where you want to change a lot of one thing. So for example, the runes, tier 1 runes. If you change the tier 1 runes, anything that's assigned as a tier 1 rune will have those colors immediately changed or the text changed for it, rather than you going, okay, I want to change it for glacial runes. Oh, I need to change it for inspiration runes and doing it all one by one. That obviously that's going to be tedious and long. So here, this just covers the generic stuff on a base level, and then the customization level, you can go in even further and override it with the more custom stuff for the more specific items if need be. Then there's the advanced tab. I'm not going to go through the advanced tab because it's advanced. It's for people who have far more experience with both their own loot filters as well as others, and they can basically combine stuff, add presets, things like that, stuff that it's just going to fly over your head, frankly, and there's no point in talking about it now. But this last bit is the export function. Now, the export function is fantastic. What this does is it enables you to get the loot filter in 2 formats, either a text file or it just adds it to your account. Is there a benefit of one of these things over the other? Technically, yes, I suppose, and I'll explain those momentarily. But for now, however, you want to click on the filter name field, type in the name of your filter. You can see a couple of that I've used in the past, such as strict uwu. You then want to select which platform you want it for, whether or not you want it to be public. This means other people can just see it through the Path of Exile website, and if they are familiar with who you are and trust your loot filter, they can just use yours instead. Subsequently, you can add a description, of course. You can set it to load by default, and a couple of other features if you're either a Patreon or you edit the filter a lot as you're playing, which is again more of an advanced thing. Then you've got the option to sync or download. You click on that, you've got sync and save, so that will sync it to your account. If you're a console player, this is the method you're going to want to use. Or you've got the option to download the save file to your local PC as a text file. Now, just to quickly reiterate, as I said, if you're a console player, you're going to want to use save and sync because obviously you've got no way of accessing or adding the file to your console if you were to download it. If you're a PC player, save and sync is still probably your best option. If you're someone who thinks that they're going to be making changes to it ad hoc, let's say, on the fly as you're playing the game, then you're going to want to save and download it because it will help you a bit in the future, and I'll cover that now. So one of the reasons you might want to download the filter to your PC locally is, as I mentioned, you may want to make ad hoc changes to it whilst you're playing. Maybe you've discovered that there's a particular base type that you want to see, and you don't want to have to go back to the website and mess around, and maybe you've gotten a little bit more familiar with the syntax by now. So to edit it on the fly, all you would need to do is hit the O key on your keyboard, go to game if it's not already selected, and then click open your filter folder. And of course, we'll then open the folder where all the filters are, and then you'd open the one that you wish to edit it, and then you can add things on the fly. When you're done, you'd simply click File, Save if you're using Notepad, and then just refresh that folder, it reloads the filter for you, and that's it. Your update has now been applied. Technically, there are other ways to do that without having the file locally on your PC, but there's a lot more clicks. There's going to websites, there's clicking on certain things in your account settings to get there and then doing it that way. It's just long-winded and annoying. If you do want to get stuck into learning the syntax, by the way, there is a resource available for you on the pathofexile.com website /item-filter/about. It will take you to this page here. It is obviously, for the most part, based on Path of Exile 1, so there's going to be potentially some things missing that are available in Path of Exile 2, but that's mostly base types and stuff like that. Otherwise, the syntax is pretty much exactly the same, but there's a plethora of information on how it can all be used here for you. Otherwise, what I'm going to quickly show you is what it looks like when you sync it with your account. So you'd log into pathofexile.com currently. You log into the website, click on this text here if you've already logged in, and that'll take you to this screen here where it shows you your basic account information. Then towards the bottom, you've got item filters. Once you select that, you'll be presented with anything that you've already synchronized with your account. Now, console players, this is the important bit for you guys. This is how you have it show up in-game for you when you access the settings. If it's not showing for you here, that means something's gone wrong and you might need to start again from the beginning. But this is also where you would edit, like I was saying earlier, the filter manually without having to do it from the local file, which in some cases is going to be better because you've got like the color coding here, which might make it a bit easier on the eye and a bit more discernible. But otherwise, that's the other way to do it. But as I said, that's lots of clicking, logging in and doing stuff as opposed to just opening a text file and then saving and refreshing it. Now, console players, at the time of making this video, you guys can't do this until later this week when the new patch rolls out that will enable this functionality. I'm still not 100% sure if you'll be able to create and synchronize your custom filters as of yet. However, fret not. At the bottom of the screen, you can find popular item filters on the item filter ladder. As I mentioned earlier, you can make them public, which means other people can see them. And NeverSync, praise him, has added his own, which you can see here. So these are the Path of Exile 1 filters. You'd want to, of course, select Path of Exile 2. As you can see, his are the most popular by far, and they're all available with the varying strictnesses in the name. Then what you do is click on the one that you want. You'd select follow, and then that would add it to the initial list, which you can't get back to from the screen. So you go to item filters, and then it's added as followed item filters. And then again, that will appear in your in-game settings. However, as far as I'm aware, I think they just didn't advertise it because he's technically a third party. But otherwise, I suspect that yours that you've made through the Filterblade website will just appear here anyway. And once again, just to show you how you would then select that, you would go to the settings. Obviously on console, it will look a little bit different. Go to game, item filter, and then you can select the filter that you wish to use from this list. If it's not appearing in the list immediately because you've just added it, just refresh it. That will then synchronize it with the website and whatnot, and it should appear thereafter. Once you select it, you'll then say filter loaded, etc. and when it was last updated by yourself, for example, or by NeverSync. And also, if you do get into the habit of editing it on the fly, it will tell you if you've just typed some random bullshit. It can't discern either. It will also say like something like, there is an exception. This doesn't work, mate. What are you doing? Stop making things up. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the very basics on how to use a loot filter and add it to your account, both on PC and on console. GG have said that in the future, they'll be making some small quality of life improvements, especially for console players, like having it on the Path of Exile 2 website and just making the all-round functionality a bit easier to get to. But otherwise, Filterblade, every league, when there's a new one, is going to be your place to go to create a filter that's going to be specific to the league. And once every week or so, you just want to make sure it gets like updated. Maybe update it yourself by increasing the strictness as you get further along into the league. That way, any new items added into the game will get updated if they suddenly become a lot more popular or become a lot more worthwhile. And of course, it means that you will see far less clutter on your screen whilst you're playing the game, which will help your resources a bit as well. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you did, you should probably consider subscribing and liking the video. It helps with the algorithm gods. I also stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Brian the Pirate, and have a Discord. All of that can be found in the comment section below. Otherwise, thank you all very much for watching. Farewell. I'll remember you.